The Midnight's expansion is the next expansion coming to World of Warcraft after the War Within, and it is taking us back to the lands of Quel'Thalas. While we don't know the specifics yet, that general idea can bring forth a lot of speculation. What has happened in these lands since the Burning Crusade? How has Eversong Woods changed? Will the Ghostlands be healed? Today, I want to dive deep into one specific area of Quel'Thalas and talk about how exactly this place may be different in Midnights, and that place is Zul'Aman. First, we have to think about the area as a whole, because the Amani Empire has lived in these forests for a very long time, longer than the High Elves even, and we have seen a lot of history of parts of this region of the world flipping back and forth between the High Elves and the Amani Trolls. There is a lot of history here, but for the most part, you just need to know that this is a contested territory and the Amani Trolls have suffered many defeats over the millennia. Where throughout the Eversong Woods and the Ghostlands in the Burning Crusade expansion, we see a variety of troll villages dotted throughout these zones, especially around Lake Elrondar, a pretty big body of water that occupies a good chunk of both zones. Players may remember doing some quests where you have to defeat some trolls and even collect their ears around here. Further south, we have more villages that you can find right outside of the Amani capital city of Zul'Aman, where you do the classic hero things and poison their food supplies while wiping out their population. Where later on in the expansion, we saw the raid introduced to the game, where we fight a variety of incredibly important Amani trolls, including one of the most famous trolls of all, Zul'Jin, a true hero to the Amani Empire and one of the fiercest story characters we have seen in the World of Warcraft story, where we kill him inside of the raid. Fast forward to the Cataclysm expansion, we see the Zandalari tribe attempting to restore the Troll Empire once again, where we dive back into both the Zul'Gurub raid as well as Zul'Aman. Where in Zul'Aman, now a dungeon, we fight many of these powerful trolls again, but we fight the new leader of the Amani Empire known as Dakara, a brutal warlord who dreams of rebuilding the empire of the Amani and to avenge Zul'Jin's death. After that, we don't see too much from the Amani Empire. We see a few Amani trolls in the Mist of Pandaria expansion, as well as in the Battle for Azeroth expansion, where we can see their empire dwindling. But if we are to know anything about the Amani Empire, they may dwindle, but it is unlikely they will ever be truly extinguished. For when we return to Quel'Thalas, there is a big chance that we will see a revitalized Amani Empire, or at the very least we will see some trolls running around the forest and trying to preserve their way of life. They may have lost some of their villages, they may have strengthened some of their villages, they may have built some new villages, or maybe even a new capital. Though it is likely that if we explore through the areas around Zul'Aman, we will encounter these trolls once again and learn more about their culture. A potential change to the Amani Empire that we may see coming is a bit of a retcon to this world space. The map of World of Warcraft has changed a lot over the years. Going back to vanilla, we see the area of Quel'Thalas look different compared to how it looks when it was released in the Burning Crusade, so there is obviously precedent within World of Warcraft itself that this area of the world can change a bit. But if we look towards the Cataclysm expansion, we see the areas of Odem and Kalimdor, as well as the Twilight Highlands and the Eastern Kingdoms, change a bit to allow new space for a new zone in an area that was originally smaller. So looking towards the Midnight's expansion, we can guess that there is a slightly more than zero chance that this will happen to Quel'Thalas once again. Where I think the most likely place for this to happen is east of Zul'Aman, because Quel'Thalas is kind of peninsular, where there are beaches and harbors all along the western and northern parts of these zones, as well as the northeastern part of the Eversong Woods. But when we look towards Zul'Aman, the troll capital city is the edge of this map, so I think it would be very easy to just have the continent be expanded a bit further to include more of the woodlands of Quel'Thalas. Where if you do this to add more content or playable areas in Midnights, it would make sense that an expansion in this direction would add a lot more to the story of the Amani trolls, as we might be able to explore more of Zul'Aman as well as other troll outposts, which can allow us to explore a wide variety of different troll related storylines. We could explore stories related to the trolls' history in this area of the world, maybe their experiences following the defeat of Zul'Jin and Dakara, maybe some stories related to the Amani Loa, but the biggest mystery that we have going on here is related to the Old Gods. Going back to some of the earliest lore in the Warcraft universe's timeline, we have the entire story of the Old Gods and the Titans and their power struggle across Azeroth, where some of the strongest minions of the Old Gods are Cathraxi, who We know about multiple of these monstrous entities, and we fight many of them throughout World of Warcraft. But one incredibly important one was Kithix. Kithix, alongside Zakaj the Corruptor, were freed from their Titan-forged prison and were sent out to chase after the Keeper Tier who had stolen the Discs of Norgannon, where Zakaj died in that conflict and can be found underneath what is now modern-day Terrasfall Glades. Kithix survived and rested near the Zandalar Mountains. Thousands of years later, due to some shenanigans, Kithix reawakened and rallied the insectoid Akir and founded the Ajakir Empire, who waged war against the Trolls. Where this was an absolutely massive and devastating war that had major ramifications on Azeroth, but ultimately, the Akir were slowly driven back and Kithix fled to the northeastern corner of Azeroth, where the Amani tribe of Trolls tracked Kithix into these woodlands, fighting back against a seemingly unending swarm of Akiri, where the Amani Empire launched an all-out assault that was practically a suicide mission against Kithix, and were able to strike this minion of the Old Gods down. The few remaining Amani Trolls founded the temple city of Zul'Aman right on top of the corpse of Kithix, which grew into what we see it in World of Warcraft. Now, if you know anything about the story going on in World of Warcraft right now, you can probably see where this is going, where there are a lot of mysteries surrounding Zul'Aman in connection to this Old God minion, where there is some sort of influence of the Old Gods going on in this part of the world, and with the story focused so heavily on Xal'atath, the Old Gods, and the Void, and with Midnight's bringing us to this area of the world, surely there is some sort of story that will be taking place in and around Zul'Aman in connection to this fallen Cathraxi. In fact, there is an even bigger connection here, because Xal'atath, the major villain in World of Warcraft right now, who is an absolutely ancient enemy, was of course a weapon, a blade of the Old Gods, and has been used by many people over the years, but Xal'atath manipulated the witch doctor Xandil to awaken Kithix, which led to the aforementioned shenanigans, where Xandil used Xal'atath to reawaken Kithix, who was slumbering in the Zandalar Mountains, which led to all the events I talked about earlier, where after Kithix awoke, he himself wielded Xal'atath against the Trolls. So in an expansion where we will likely be dealing with Xal'atath, we are going to an area of the world where Xal'atath played a part in, and will be interacting with an evil entity that Xal'atath is ultimately responsible for unleashing upon the world, where I would be honestly surprised if some sort of story surrounding these topics doesn't take place in Zul'Aman in the Midnight's expansion. In fact, I would even be a bit surprised if it wasn't an integral part of the overall Midnight story. One additional note I want to talk about is while Kithix is dead, we know that the bodies of minions of the Old Gods can still manipulate the environment and people near them, where there is speculation that Hexlord Malakras, a boss who we fight inside of Zul'Aman, bound himself to the dark magic of Kithix and used those magics, where if the speculation is true, that is evidence that Kithix, or some sort of magic surrounding him, is manipulating the Amani Trolls to some extent, which could escalate in the future. Whereas we return to Quel'Thalas in the Midnight's expansion, I am definitely expecting for us to be interacting with the Amani Trolls, where I would not be surprised if we see a major storyline surrounding the Amani Trolls in Zul'Aman and their connections to the Old Gods. Where at the end of the day, there are a ton of mysteries surrounding this troll empire that can be explored, and it will be interesting to see what exactly plays out once Midnight rolls around. Thank you all for watching this video. I love talking about and speculating about mysteries and various other secrets in video games, where it was fun to do a bit of a trip down memory lane and to also look ahead to the future of Quel'Thalas as we will see it unfold in the future. I hope you enjoyed this type of video, and I hope you all are taking good care of yourselves. Have a good one, everyone.